to give a quick overview of what we're going to cover today, and then we're just going to get straight into it. So we're going to explore today a little bit around the challenge of building integrations for retail, and specifically for the logistics required to power the retail industry. Joining us today, we have Alex from James Fulfilment. Alex is one of the partners that works with us to build integrations for their end customers and uses the Voor platform to reduce what might be a 3 to 6 month process down to kind of a couple of weeks. And in doing so, expedites the whole process of bringing a customer online with more customized and kind of more powerful integrations. So today, I'm going to give Alex a chance to introduce himself and specifically what he does at J&J. Then we're going to get into a little bit of the kind of specific challenges that come with retail logistics and the integrations that power them. And then Sean, who's our founder and CEO, is going to hop in and give a little bit of a demo about how you would go about building an integration in the Voor platform. So Alex, I don't know if you want to hop in, unmute yourself, and give a quick intro both on J&J itself, but also what you do at the company.
Sure. So yeah, my name is Alex Sims. I'm a solution architect and senior engineer at James & James. I've been with the company for about 8 years and watched us grow from a sort of small business up to a medium-sized enterprise where we are today. As we've grown, our sort of requirements have changed vastly, and the size of our development team hasn't grown exponentially with the size of the company. And those challenges of scaling come sort of priority issues with things like building new connectors. So we'd like to focus most of our effort on providing value to our clients through how James & James would offer scalable, beneficial solutions to our clients in managing logistics. And focusing our efforts on how we get orders into our system isn't really the sort of bread and butter that delivers value to our end customers. We want to be able to provide portals of insights that tell you when you should be sending us new stock, the health of your stock, how well specific lines are performing in your sort of stock portfolio, and where you might see that you're losing value as a business from dormant lines that aren't generating value for yourselves. So James & James really provides two facets. One, we have our client-side portal, which is what I described there. And then we also build and manage our own WMS. So once we receive orders in, we build all of our own proprietary WMS that prioritizes how we pick, pack, and ship orders across our network of 6 or 7 fulfillment centers that are in various locations geographically.
Nice.
That's me.
No, that's a great overview. Really appreciate it. And you touched there on you guys have grown as a business substantially, but not necessarily grown the kind of size of your development team. And so curious, like in its current state, how do you tackle integrations? Are you writing those just purely in code? Are you using a platform like another existing platform? And what is the kind of average development time and cost look like when it comes to building, deploying, testing, maintaining those integrations over time?
Yeah, so currently I think we have about 16 or 17 different integrations, and they're all provisioned and built originally in-house. They're all bespoke integrations. That's anything from like Shopify, which is our main channel and the one we still heavily invest in ourselves, as well as things like eBay, Limworks, Brightpearl. We've got quite a vast range of connectors. But the problem comes when we onboard a new client that might have, say, a different connector where they store all their orders. We recently had one for Acumatica that we provisioned with yourselves. Yeah. We didn't have the development resource to tackle that. And the reason why is like we have an ever-growing roadmap of projects. We don't have the capacity to address all of those projects. And when we're onboarding a new client and we want to be able to ingest their orders, having to pivot to build a new connector is a big loss in resource. It takes 1 to 2 developers and a QA to provision the workflows. And we have several workflows that we consider the minimum required to get orders into the system, and that is polling orders, so retrieving pending orders from the remote system, and dispatch notifications. When we finish processing an order, we'll notify the remote system that we're done, and then stock syncing. But there are other facets that clients really want to have in one of the integrations. For example, onboarding with us, they might want to ingest all of their products into our platform, or they want to import all of their deliveries and create advanced shipping notices in our platform, so they're not having to create them through either our API by building their own integration or through Control Port. And by partnering with yourselves, because previously we did this all ourselves and we'd only provide those three basic facets: polling, dispatch, and stock. We're now able to provide richer integrations that tick all of those boxes of the additional functionality that a client might want.
Yeah. And we've seen, so we work across with yourselves, a number of order management systems in the luxury space, and a number of retailers too. It's interesting how implementation time and your ability to provide a highly customized implementation and integration whilst not letting that implementation become a 9, 12, 18-month process
Yes,
has become an increased focus of sales differentiation. And so curious your thoughts on that, how you're kind of looking to expedite implementation overall.
Yeah, I forgot to touch on timeline. So typically in-house, we would plan a integration anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. But with integration, that comes like testing as well as development. But it's also the ongoing sort of maintenance burden of managing one of those integrations. Maybe the remote system like Shopify might upgrade or deprecate portions of their API, and that would then force us to schedule more work internally. Whereas we're now able to offload that to yourselves, which frees up a lot of resource internally. So instead of spending 4 weeks dedicated to building an integration, we can now spend 4 weeks focusing on strategic projects internally that deliver value to our business.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's important to take a step back and for everybody that's watching, outline what we mean by agentic integration and how that works, and then in the context of J&J, what that's led to. Sean, I don't know if you want to hop in at this point and walk through why you started Voor, because I think this is actually the use case where there's a lot of parallels here, and then what we mean by agentic integration and how we've approached building integrations differently at Voor, and then maybe we can let Alex reply on that and then hop in with the demo.
Yeah, thank you very much, George. And so when to build the idea for Voor, my previous company was a marketplace platform, and we would implement this marketplace platform for large retailers so they can enable marketplace transactions. And forever, we face the same issue with as yourself, Alex, is we're doing custom integrations into every different customer's systems, whether that be ERPs, order management system, warehouse management systems, or PIM systems. We'll be constantly having to do these varying and difficult, complex integrations all the time. When we had the opportunity to start a new business, we created Voor to hopefully change and create a paradigm shift with how iPaaS typically works. How iPaaS works currently is you'd have a bunch of pre-built connectors with a certain iPaaS, and then you would build into those pre-built connectors and try and do standard field mappings, etc., between systems. But always you come up against limitations to expand, to maintain, or to even build net new integrations into custom systems where the connectors don't exist. So we're seeing like the surgence of LLMs. We decided to build a company and platform that would help suit for the modern AI era and for the forever changing demands of customers that require custom integrations instantly, so they can move quickly to unlock their pipelines or to enable other business opportunities while effectively running production grade integrations at scale. And that's where we came up with Voor, which, as an agentic integration platform, it does that. We break down an integration into 4 different parts. First of all, the scoping and research element. So we have an agent that goes off and searches all of the required documentation to do with any system and agentically come to the decision and the set scoping parameters for that integration. As we know, this takes product owners or architects days and days to come to a conclusion on what the scope for an integration would be. And how many times have you come across customer systems where it's, what's that field and how does that map to there? And they think, I don't know what that field is. And that's what we have built our AI to do. So that's a research agent. Then it goes into the authentication and credentials handling agent. How do we authenticate and connect to a net new or brand new connector on Voor? So our agent goes and configures the connector exactly how it should be authenticated into any given system. covering things like OAuth2, OAuth1, basic auth, API key, and any other custom function or custom authentication that is required for an integration. And then after that, you can test all of your endpoints that can pull all of the custom body or the custom payloads from those endpoints. So our agent now has the full context of required fields and custom objects coming from those systems. Then it goes on to the code agent, and the code agent, like we've seen with Cursor, Bolt, Lovable, all of these scaling, prompt it and it will build it. It's a similar sort of approach, but because it's a custom integration and requires all that upfront knowledge, we have that from the research agent and the authentication agent that then can go and build the integration very accurately and very quickly. And then it gets to the runtime. So once you deploy an integration, you have full observability, alerting, logs, tracing of every single execution that runs through Vasori. And from time to time, different systems will change their endpoints, or there might be a schema drift, or the payload might change, and that causes validation errors or your integration to break. We have tried to mitigate against this by creating a runtime agent that sits listening to all of the logs and listening to and also continuously researching the endpoints to see if there have been any breaking changes. That will then surface it to the user who can fix it with AI instantly rather than having to pull resource off sprints and customers having a meltdown because thousands of orders aren't going through. So that's how we break down all the different agents in Vasori, and it results in building integrations very quickly and effectively, helping customers like yourselves unlock their pipeline to get to that revenue quicker and take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah, I think it's important to emphasize here how much Vasori is. It's not a hand it to it and it builds it tool. It is a tool for augmenting solution architects and solution engineers and enabling them to take what would be a multi-week process down to a couple of hours for simple integrations, a couple of days for complex integrations. And of course, as Vasori, we don't just provide the platform, we also provide the team to offload the integration work. And I think, Alex, is what you were emphasizing on. It's not just the ability for us to build extremely quickly, it's the ability for the platform to build quickly and for us as a business to provide you with the outlet to offload the total integration work.
It's that. And then, as Sean was saying, the observability. As an architect, I can then go and verify the behavior of that integration after you've handled the implementation. We don't necessarily have to touch integration, but if we're curious to how it's implemented, everything's there. The code, the architecture diagram, we can import the architectural diagram into our reference diagrams, and everything's documented end to end. One of the other really powerful things that it's unlocked is it's allowed us to extend our API where required to meet new behavioral requests from a client. And that extension of our API isn't available to anybody else that's building a direct integration to James & James, like some of our clients leverage. So we've now only got to manage a single interface to get orders into our system. And everyone's benefiting from that, whilst also allowing Vasori to build multiple integrations into us from multiple ERPs.
Yeah. So we've been talking for 20 minutes, and I'm sure there are some people itching to see a little bit of a demo. So Sean, I don't know if you want to hop in and share screen and walk through the platform. I think, of course, we might not be able to show the full research agent today because, of course, it takes 10 to 15 minutes to run with the extent of research it's doing. But yeah, Sean, if you're ready to hop in and share screen. Oh, you're on mute, Sean.
I said, sure, no problem. I'll share my screen. I'm going to share this whole window here. We can see what's happening. I want to go through a couple of tabs. So this is James & James to Fulfill integration. And we've had your permission to showcase this on the demo. Is that right? What this integration is looking to do is this integration synchronizes data between Fulfill, which is an ERP and inventory management system, and James & James, which is, as we all know, a global 3PL fulfillment provider. And it uses the Vasori Run SDK, so that's all of our infrastructure in Vasori, and a comprehensive data integration that handles all multiple flows, including product synchronization, order synchronization, shipment tracking, internal transfer management, supplier shipment integration, inventory adjustment, customer returns processing. And then we have some other information about like the structure of that. So once you prompt the story to build an integration after it's been through its research agent, which just on this other tab now, I have a research agent just based on just product synchronization, that it goes off and searches all of the internet and other resources that you may attach and give it, to then go and enrich all of the context that our AI should have about these systems, to then go and create a findings document once it's finished of the technical resources that are required. So all the endpoints, and let's say maybe there's some specific queries that we need to be making, and all of the architecture of the integration. It will also produce some questions where, let's say our prompt that we've given it is it's an ambiguous prompt, because that's how we like to prompt AI. And it comes back with questions asking about specific instances, data structures, etc. And then once that's done, it then produces the workflow prompt to then put into the chat to go and build the integration. So considering we have already done that for James and James previously, we then gave it the prompt to go and build the integration. Now it builds all the integration as code. So you can see this as it is a cursor for integrations. But when we look at the code, we've got all the different, at the top, the services that we're going to be using, the types, utilities, and then the workflows. Now the workflows is where I want to double click on today. So this is, let's say, the inventory adjustment workflow. You can see at the very top, it's imported the Vasori Run SDK. And it's important to note this because this is the infrastructure of Vasori to enable you to run your integrations in production at scale. So if we go over to here, you can see the authentication config has been created, both for Fulfill and James and James. Now that is agentically created, regardless whether Vasori has seen or heard of that system ever before. Our agents will go off and find the authentication config and create that on your project for you. Now that authentication and credentials handling service is part of our SDK, our Vasori Run SDK. And this handles all different things like pagination, all of our triggers, so whether that's polling or webhooks. It handles all things like batching, delays, splitting, all of the workflow logic that requires infrastructure. And Vasori is that infrastructure to run your integrations. So then it carries on through the integration workflow, walking through different interface responses, any validation code that needs to be created, all the way to the completion of that workflow. Now, this is interesting because as a technical person, like our implementation team or your development team, you can use this as a development tool to build out your integration completely. Now, the code, as we know with AI, is generated to around about an 80 to 90% accuracy. And then it just leaves an engineer to review the code through a series of QA and then test it. There's other documents that you can see of your integration. So this is an architectural overview of the integration that's been created. So if we start at the James and James side, you can see that there's tracking, ASM management, inventory management, product catalog, order management, transfer management, returns management. These are all the endpoints within James and James. And then in Fulfill, we've got the internal transfers, supply shipments, product data, customer shipments, inventory data, and customer returns. And then as you can see, we're calling from these different systems or posting to these different systems. And this is the integration layer. This is all the logic that is happening in that code that we have just previously seen. So this is all of the logic to do with data transformation, persisting storage, like in a key value store, authentication, the alerting, the logs, etc., and that observability, and then every single trigger point and workflow sync. So that is the architecture. So this is really handy for when, as a user, you want to see what your integration is actually doing. Then we have our data transformation mapping document, which shows you the source schema, the target schema, and then shows you the mappings that are happening between those different fields. So this can cover really complex data transformation requirements like concatenation, conversions, calculations, conditional selections. There's multiple different things that our transformation engine can occur. Now, there's two ways we can do this. One, we can depend on our standard sort of AI that we use for transformation. But for larger retailers that we've worked with, we take all of the taxonomies of the target system and the source system, or the data trees, and then we train our AI specifically on those mappings. In use cases like that, and we've done another webinar on this, in use cases like that, we've managed to achieve 98 to 100% accuracy rates on data transformation across 1 billion SKUs. So it's really accurate, our data transformation engine. And this is all real-time data transformation. A few other options that you have around the platform is any issues that are logged within the integration. This is a good integration. This is live and deployed for James and Fulfill right now. There is no issues that have been created. But if we can go onto the logs, you can see the runtime of all of the logs that are happening. And it's beautiful there because I can see no red. So you can go back in, and also there's an option if you've got more of a DevOps team for that observability. You can integrate this into your Grafana, your Datadog, so you can see real time all of the logs of this without having to go into Vasori as well. That's just a simple integration for us. Then there's other things like multi-tenancy. Let's say there is another customer that comes to James that has a Fulfill account and they need to integrate it. Rather than building a net new integration, we can just add another tenant to this integration by heading into users. You can create a new user and then authenticate that user against the same integration. And then at the same time, you can handle all the different variables to do with that specific customer's implementation. As this is for a single customer, there is no dynamic variables required. And yeah, just not spend too much time on it. There is other things like I just opened up, like the executions and tracing. So if an execution happens partially, let's say we grabbed a webhook, you can see that the tracing of every single step occurs. And if there's a failure in a step, we can just restart the step from there as well. You can have observability over latency, observability over throughput, execution amount. It's all there for you to visibly see. Now, I'm happy for any questions to be put into the chat to answer on the fly, but that concludes my demo of a James and Fulfill integration.
Awesome. Alex, anything you want to add to that? You're an engineer and a solution architect yourself. Is there anything there that kind of really, when you first started using the Vasori platform and working with Vasori, really stands out as making a truly like exponential difference to the development process that you would normally go through?
I think it was what Sean touched on at the end there, the ability to, one, export architectural diagrams and bring them into our sort of record of all the diagrams that make up our system, as well as being able to have observability of every execution. And if anything did ever go wrong, we could see where it went wrong. And if it was an integration we was managing ourselves, we'd be able to fix it. But when it was like a self-managed one, it was really easy to then raise with your teams to get it fixed.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's more the observability and logging piece.
And that's another point I want to touch on and maybe ask you of is the customer service at Vasori. One point that I have, and when I was using iPasses, is it was a big bugbear that getting that support on any execution failures or issues, validation issues with integrations. How have you found our remedy and mitigation against some of the issues you may have found with your integrations?
Yeah, typically we've not had many sort of failures in our integrations, so that's great. But the time when we had maybe like a small outage window, the time frame from raising a support issue with one of your engineers and actually having that turned around was extremely quick. A, on response, B, on getting a root cause analysis, and C, being back up and having our integration running. It wasn't down for long at all. And to be able to then communicate that onto our customer to explain what was happening, everyone was happy when to understand, well, one, it's a new integration, so we expect some teething issues, and two, to be as transparent as possible within the smallest time frame, because from our perspective, when everything's self-managed internally, we can derive those RCAs really quickly and get back to our customers. And handing it off to a partner, there's always a risk that that window is going to be larger. So that was one piece of risk that we absorbed when we outsourced some integrations. But so far, it's been great.
That's good.
And you mentioned Acumatica at the beginning is one that we're working on right now. And something we run into in retail a lot is One, these large retailers, these large supply chain groups want the platform deployed on their cloud. They want it behind their security systems. They want to ensure that they are meeting their standards for kind of InfoSec and things like that. Two, of course, the other thing with ERPs is they never look the same. Those two systems, just because two clients are on Acumatica does not mean that Acumatica is set up in any way in the same sense. Sean, I wonder if you want to touch on how the platform, one, can be ported to third-party clouds, but two, how we handle the use case of getting into really nitty-gritty ERP systems and supply chain systems where the idea of standardized fields just isn't really a concept.
Yeah, always hard as well, because you can't just do a curl and then expect every field to be populated. So it's pretty difficult to get that scoping right up front, especially if we're working with test data and unpopulated fields. But first, wanted to touch on maybe the cybersec side of things and deployment options. So obviously for Sori at standard, you can deploy your integration instantly once it's been configured and built. And that runs in Vasori. We've got GCP, it's all Kubernetes deployment. You have one replica, so you get two versions, and then you get one replica of the integration. So if one goes down, you've still got your stand up. Rarely does that ever happen, but if it happens, it's there for risk mitigation. However, the bandwidth that those single pods that can handle, one single pod can handle 170 million executions per month on our standard deployment, which is a lot, especially if we're in the order management space or the product management space as well. Those executions really start racking up. And then the cost to add an extra pod, which doubles your bandwidth, is less than it would be natively with a cloud. We don't mark it up, but the way we've innovated our pod deployment is way cheaper than a standard deployment. Now, if there are security aware or security conscious CISOs that we need to work around, we have the option to deploy integrations on what we call execution pools. And execution pools, it takes the whole infrastructure of your integration and deploys it on a specific infrastructure on any cloud that you require. So it can be on Azure, GCP, AWS, etc. Now, that has it on your premise, but it also creates all of the data stores for key value store, all of your authentication and credentials handling can all run in your environment as well. So as you can imagine, we've got a lot of security conscious and PII data processing through Vasori. So it's a critical requirement for us as well.
Yeah. So I realize we've at the 30-minute mark now. If anybody in the audience has any last-minute kind of questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. There is a public chat and a Q&A. There is also a poll live if anybody wants to fill in how long their last integration build took. So Isabel asks, Sean, how does agentic integration handle exceptions or edge cases in retail logistics? And I guess that's really two things. It's edge cases once the integration is live and running, but also, as Alex mentioned, sometimes you have multiple clients using the same integration, but they want slight tweaks to the integration. And curious how we handle that within the Vasori platform.
Yeah, of course, it always helps with solutionizing the scoping. However, when you end up working directly with end users who, let's say in your case, are brands, retailers or owners of products, they're not really too privy to the data transformation side of all the different fields that need to map and the business logic that's required specifically for them, which is why the research agent is really powerful and effective when it comes to scoping out integrations. So that's the one side. And believe me, we built the research agent for a reason, because we knew that was a problem. Then when you go into having multi-tenanted integrations, so that's what I said about you can build one integration and then add different end users to that single integration. Now, one of them might have the product structure in a certain way. They might need a certain bank transaction ID key. And this is all very specific to that end user. We have, and I clicked on it before, which is variables, but we have a concept called dynamic variables within the platform, which means that we can capture as many dynamic variables across all the different varying configs and edge cases of customer requirements. And when they go to connect to that integration, whether it's through a UI you create and you embed our integrations, or within the UI that you just saw, they can just select those dynamic variables, fill in the fields, and then they can manage their own config for their integration when onboarding. the touch points are really low, and the user experience for our end users and your end users, Alex, and other customers' end users is completely fluid and very nice to use. So yeah, that's that one case. And then at runtime, again, the runtime agent does look for, let's say, invalid payloads that are coming through. Let's say a field hasn't been mapped correctly or hasn't been caught in scoping. That then comes through, notifies the user that there's a validation issue, and then it suggests a fix with AI. You can either approve that fix, review that fix before it goes back into production. The last thing we want is AI going haywire and just changing integrations. So we do still have that human in the loop review or edit access as well. So yeah, that covers the 3 different points you made.
Yeah, I think on that as well, Sean, we have it configured so yeah, once the integration goes live, most of the time, 99% of the orders flow through. But there might be those edge cases where, as you said, something's not mapped correctly, or we have a maximum string length, for example, on a specific field. And the agentic stuff has been great on sort of matching that sometimes, but there's always outliers. And we've set it up so it will notify a Slack channel if a translation failed and that order couldn't be imported, and that then alerts us to be able to modify the integration. So that feedback loop can be tailored to notify you wherever you want to get that message published to.
Yeah. And I think one point that I really want to make is this isn't the end solution. We started Vasori maybe 3 years ago, and AI and LLMs only came to the level that we believed the platform needed in order to operate at this stage around about January, February this year. So it's only this year we've really been able to have the full sort of functionality and suite that we designed Vasori for. It's only getting better. And with the new agents that we're applying into the platform consistently, it's only going to get better, more dynamic, more accurate, and more trustworthy with the AI to go and build these integrations, like from net new, but also at runtime as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what's next around the corner of innovation.
Awesome. So I think we're going to wrap up for now. Alex, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hop on, walk through the use cases you've seen with your time at J&J, both before Vasori and after partnering with Vasori. For anybody that's interested to learn more about J&J, please reach out to Alex and we'll send over his email in the kind of follow-up email afterwards. If you're interested in learning more about the use case specifically between Vasori and J&J, I've dropped in the chat the link to our website, and that includes the link to our use case page that walks through kind of some of the integrations we built and how we built them and the specific challenges we've tackled. If you have any questions about Vasori as a whole, there will be a follow-up email afterwards that will include a recording of this. Anybody who didn't make it or wants to share it, and my email and Sean's email. If anybody wants some time to chat one-on-one, always happy to hop on and find 30 minutes to walk through your specific integration use cases. Again, Alex, really appreciate the time, and we'll chat to everybody soon.
Thank you very much.